Okay, so this is the Tulsa American. This is actually the last B-24 bomber ever built, and it was built here in Tulsa. And some really cool factors about this aircraft specifically is how involved Tulsans were themselves. So this logo right here, we see the Tulsa American banner, and then we have the Tulsa American's mascot, Tulsa Joe. This was actually created by Floyd Bridges, who was a local artist and worker at the Douglas factory where this aircraft was built. He actually won a contest to decide who would be the individual who would paint the mascot and create it, and Floyd Bridges won. And actually later on, once the aircraft was finished, Floyd was actually able to take a ride in the aircraft because he won the contest as well. And if you take a look, you can see some other interesting features with the paint job here. This big 24 here, that's actually combat paint. So a lot of these aircraft would do massive bombing runs with multiples of the same aircraft. So think like 100 different versions of these specifically. This 2-4 was to acknowledge that this was the 24th aircraft of, say, 100 in line, so people didn't necessarily get confused. A lot of folks weren't sure what the names of the aircrafts were, so they had to use other identifiers as well. Now, if we take a look towards the front, we'll see sort of the entry gunner's box here. These aircraft were heavily armed. They had multiple spots for the gunners. They had one at the front, one at the back, two at the top, and one at the bottom, not to mention some of the sides as well. So you'd have quite a few individuals in these aircraft working the different guns, vice versa. Usually on these aircraft, they would have a crew of about 7 to 10, specifically 7 here. Now, if we go around the other side, we can see some of the different elements of how Tulsans contributed. So specifically, we see things like here's Floyd Bridges working on the aircraft. We also have the Tulsa Douglas factory, which was actually a mile long. And they used things like this Jeep over here to get from one end of the factory to the other because it was so long. Now, the Tulsa American specifically only served about 7 missions. She was built in 1944, and she flew from Tulsa to the UK, and then from the UK to Italy, who was an Allied power in World War II at that point. And on her 7th and final bombing mission, she was actually shot down about 7 miles off of the coast of what we now know as Croatia, where she rests today. And if you come by the museum, you can even see a small piece of the original Tulsa American that we were able to excavate in the crash site under about 125 feet of water. All of these great aspects you can read about here at the museum, or you can even experience them in our virtual reality exhibition that tells the story of the Tulsa American as well.